Ladies and gentlemen, drivers, gig workers, and everyone in between, welcome to This Week in Rideshare podcast. I'm your host, Jared Hoffa. It is Friday, August 30th, and this week, Waymo goes way wrong, Uber tweaks its teens, and feds pounce on screwber. Yep, screwber. Legal Rideshare breaks it down. And from Legal Rideshare, I'm joined by the co-founder and lead attorney, Brian Greene. Brian, happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Jared. A holiday Friday at that.
Yes, it is. That's why we're wearing the shirt. I think this is the last weekend I can wear a Hawaiian shirt. I know Labor Day, what? Is it after Labor Day, no more white? Is that the deal? I always forget the deal.
I haven't kept up on the fashion blogs, but I can confidently say that after Labor Day, the Hawaiian gear probably needs to be put in the closet.
Yep. So this is the last time. Last weekend, I'm gonna rock it hard all weekend, and this will be the last time. Go big, go big or go home, right?
Next summer, right? Until next summer, it'll live to come out again.
Until next summer. Yeah, we have some interesting stories this week. Of course, some repeated stories. But before we get into it, what we'd like to do, obviously, is do the viewer comments. And this is from last week's show. This is from Pratika. And she said, saw a rodeo community post, Kim and Steve should be guests on your podcast one week. That would be good. Brian, I'm all for that. I think that'd be awesome to have them on the show.
It'd be great. I would love to have a little bit more dialogue between all of us and run some ideas past each other. I know that they've been doing their reaction videos. It might be fun to do a real-time reaction where, we can respond to one another.
Yeah, I think exactly. It's kind of a real-time reaction. So they'll probably do a reaction video to this. So guys, let us know what you think. I think that would be great. Kim and Steve on the show. Why not? It's going to be a little party in here.
Consider this your official invite.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's head to the stories this week. The first one is really no shocker here. A Robotaxi got a little confused, and this is from AZ Family, and they reported, quote, in a video now going viral on TikTok, two East Valley women caught a self-driving Waymo headed toward them, going in the wrong way down the street. At first, the women thought the Waymo looking confused was funny, but then realized the situation was serious. This is recent ASU grads said they thought they might get into a crash with Waymo. The two said they saw a man in the passenger seat of the Waymo car heading into oncoming traffic. She said, quote, he couldn't do anything. He kind of just put his hands up. You can't really see it in the video, but explained what she saw. So again, Brian, here we go. Self-driving cars are here. Classic example of what do you do in that situation? It sounds like they could do nothing.
Yeah, that's the scary part here is this is a real example of what happens when things go wrong in these cars. We've said time and time again that the technology is not ready. And here we have an actual example of something that could have been catastrophic. So that, the vehicle's going the wrong way down the road. The passenger in the car has no way to stop it. Thank God there was no pedestrian walking across the street or bicyclist, that got in the way. You don't expect a car going the wrong way down a one-way street, and all sorts of things can go wrong. I think this is a prime example of why these cars need to be tested further off of our city streets, not putting our public at risk. We've said time and time again that this is the wave of the future. We are not ignorant, we are not blind, but we do want to see more fail safes in place to understand, to make this safer, to make the technology viable, and to ensure that our public is not endangered because of, some quirk in the system.
Yeah, and it's very well said. And I think the thing that really struck me is, at first, think it's kind of a joke, right? As we all see the self-driving cars are coming. But it was sort of like we're almost not prepared, even people on the street, for the repercussions. There's the passenger basically throwing his hands up going, I might run into you guys. I can't do anything about it. And then even the people recording the video at first, this is kind of funny. It's coming towards us. But like you said, there's just not safety in place. There's things that are still really seem to be wrong with this. And every week that we talk about this, there's more cars on the road. I just saw another article that they are putting I think a couple thousand now just in China alone. They are pumping these self-driving cars out. It's wild.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's not just the United States, it's worldwide that they're doing this. And when we talk about our community, we're talking about humanity. Like there, we should not be putting these, multi-ton cars on the road with our pedestrians. They just are not ready. And what happened in Tempe could just as easily happen in China. And we want to see everyone kept safe. And the bottom line is right now, the companies are prioritizing profit and advancement in the technology above safety. And that's not a viable path in my eyes.
No, absolutely not. And as always, I'm sure probably next week we'll talk about Waymo again or more robotaxis, but definitely food for thought to think about. Hopefully there's solutions. That's always the key. Head off to the second story this week. Uber tweaks its teens. This is from The Verge. And they reported, quote, last year, Uber launched teen accounts in 24 cities in which parents and guardians can create accounts for minors aged 13 and to 17. Since then, the list has grown to over 250 cities in all 50 states. Uber says the latest update is in response to feedback from teen users and their families. So what is the update? The update is parents and guardians can now hail a ride for their teenager from their own accounts. Previously, rides can only be hailed from the teen's customers' accounts. The ride will feature all the same safety features that are available to teens who book their own trips. Brian, I guess I'm naive here. I thought this was already a thing. I didn't realize that you couldn't do this.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. As people who don't have teenage kids, I guess we're not quite caught up on
Yeah.
yeah. I I'm on the record as saying I don't like the teenage feature on Uber. I think that it's dangerous for both the passenger and the rider. That said, here we are. Uber has spread this this application everywhere. It's in all 50 states. It's in, what'd you say, 250 cities. So if it's here, if we're doing this, then I suppose I like this feature.
Yeah.
I think I'm glad that it puts a little bit of control in the parents' hands. As long as the safety features that they have in place are still carried through, just because it's coming from a quote unquote adult account doesn't mean that the teen who's getting into the car loses some of the protection that Uber has put in place for the teenage accounts, then great. It makes things easier for both the parent and the child. I will revert back to my original statement that I would like to see this program done away with. I don't think that teens should be cruising around in rideshare vehicles with strangers. I think that teens can be erratic, which puts the driver at risk. I think that teens are also vulnerable, which put them at risk. It's a bad combination in my eyes. Maybe I'm an old fart, but that's how I feel.
No, I don't think you are. I mean, just today, a friend of mine called, and his wife were just taking an Uber and left their phone in the car, and it was a real hassle to get it back, and there was a lot of miscommunication. And they're adults, and so they knew how to handle it, but they still even called me and asked for advice. Hey, what should we do? We're having problems here. I can't imagine how that escalates if there's a teen involved. They're just not prepared to handle these things the same way that adults are. And honestly, some adults can't handle it either. But I agree with you, and I think it's interesting too, and speaks volumes that Uber is really the only company right now doing this. Lyft still does not have a teen account. It doesn't seem like Lyft is even saying they're interested in doing that. So Uber is kind of on an island here, saying, "Yeah, we're gonna roll the dice on this." It's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. Where I think this might be going eventually is when self-driving cars are ready and are, readily available for everyone to use. I actually think that could be a scenario that could be good for teens, making a car that doesn't have another person in it, to, that then the teen's not a risk to the driver, then the driver's not a risk to the teen. I could see that as an eventual end game here for teenage transportation. That said, we're a long way away from that. So when those cars are ready, when the technology is there, I feel better about that than the current setup. But we might be a decade away from the technology being at a place where I feel comfortable with it.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point, and probably what they're banking on. And our final story this week: feds have charged two people in a scheme to swindle Uber. This is from AM New York, and they reported, quote, federal prosecutors in New York charged two men with orchestrating a long-running scheme to pocket phony, quote, surcharge fees and defraud Uber, its drivers, and its customers, in part by using an app called Screwber. The FBI arrested these two guys from Queens. Both appeared in Brooklyn federal court on August 28th for arraignment in charges of wire fraud and money laundering conspiracies that could land each of them in jail for 40 years. So the way this worked is they're accused of selling hacked smartphones pre-installed with the, quote, Screwber app to 800 separate Uber drivers, which allowed them to learn a customer's destination and fare ahead of accepting a ride, and thus only accept the most lucrative fares. They sold the quote-unquote Screwber app for a $600 one-time fee plus a $300 monthly subscription. Brian, this is interesting. I feel like we're starting to see a lot more of these stories. People selling fake accounts. People now selling ways to getting, surcharges, fake surcharges. It's not good. It's not a good sign.
It's not. When any technology picks up the way that Uber did, and a ton of people adapt their lifestyle and adopt this line of work, as we've seen with the gig economy, you're going to find people who are trying to, beat the system and screw others. And that's exactly what's happened here. This fake surcharge, the other features that they're accused of in terms of a fake GPS that allowed drivers to spoof their location. All that this is doing is making it harder for the honest drivers to make a living. And it's already hard enough. The fares keep decreasing. The pay structures keep being skewed away from the drivers and towards the companies. And when we see drivers adopting things like this Screwber app that allow them to take advantage of the system, they're ultimately taking advantage of the other people who are similarly situated, the ones who need the fares and the money just as much as they do. And if the competition isn't fair, then everybody loses. We're seeing a couple people, quote unquote, win by taking advantage of the system. It makes me sick to see. We want a fair playing field. We want to see the companies do more to make life easier for the drivers, to make drivers more successful. And when drivers are hurting drivers, it just makes it impossible. So stories like this really, really eat at me.
Yeah, it's sad to see. Like you said, a few people win, most people lose. We saw a lot of this a couple years ago during the pandemic with a lot of the apps that were they're called the bot apps that were happening. The other issue too is I feel like one of us had said this before, that look, if you don't pay these people the fair wages, they will find a way to get those wages, and it's not going to be in a way that anyone likes. And I think that's what's happening here is, instead of throwing their hands up, some people are saying, fine, if you're not going to give us fair wages, we're just going to find a way to make it work. And like you said, it ends up hurting the honest drivers, the fair drivers and gig workers instead, and it just kind of creates this sort of toxic circle of life that no one wants to be part of.
Right. Yeah. And I brought it up that this fake GPS app that they had that was separate from the Screwber, but the same playing field here. It allowed drivers to spoof their location, including near the airports, so that they would get ahead of the line. It would make it look like they were in the queue, in the appropriate staging lot, get in line, and then they could be driving around wherever they wanted. When their number was then called, they go to the airport, they pick up a fare, and it makes it so the drivers who are trying to do this honestly have to wait longer, get less fares. I hear what you're saying about this being a natural result of Uber's actions and Uber taking fares away from drivers, but I see this as just a drivers taking advantage of other drivers, and
yeah. You're always gonna have bad apples no matter what. It's sad to see for sure. That is the stories for this week. So, Bryant, before we head into the long weekend, I'll let you have the last word.
Yeah, we always remind everyone to make sure to save our contact information. You can find all of our info at legalrideshare.com. We are the first law firm in the United States entirely dedicated to Uber, Lyft, and other gig-related accident and injury claims. We're going to help put money in your pocket for things like medical bills, lost wages, pain and suffering, any damage that you sustain if you're injured on the job. So please go to legalrideshare.com, save our contact information, and give us a call immediately if you find yourself injured while working.
Thank you, Brian. And as I like to say, that is the end of this week in Rideshare. See you next week.